lot of people think gunshot wounds are really easy to find. You'd be surprised. I had this case, very, very rural Arizona camper, and deputies are called to this campsite where they find this camper who's deceased, and he's kind of leaning up against a tree. So his body's on the ground, but his head and neck area is kind of leaning on the back of the base of a tree. They think he probably had some type of a natural death. So they package him up. They send him to the medical examiner's office. They package up his camp. They impound everything. The medical examiner, 3 or 4 days later, starts to do an autopsy. And the phone call that I got, quote, "I'll be goddamned if they didn't find a bullet in his head."
They'd never actually saw it when they
didn't look. Yeah, and what people don't realize, especially 22 caliber, if you get shot in the back of the head with a 22 caliber bullet, it typically will not exit, so it's in the cranial cavity, if you will. And the hole is very, very small. And with a little bit of decomp, it's very hard to identify that hole or that blood. And I've had a number of cases where somebody's come across a dead body, and it isn't until the medical examiner, specifically x-rays, that people realize, oh shit, there's a bullet in that person.
Right.
And it, of course, changes the entire investigation.
So is it typical that a 22 caliber bullet won't exit the body at all anywhere, or is it specifically cranial?
In large mass. So if you got shot in the chest, it probably wouldn't exit. If you got shot in the meaty part of your thigh, probably not. In your hand, yeah, probably so. And the reason for that is there just isn't enough mass behind that bullet to carry that force to actually exit the body. It loses so much of that inertia on the initial penetration. So in this case, when they take her in for a medical examination, they're going to do an x-ray of her head, and they find she has a 22 caliber wound to the back of her head. The bullet is just below her, like her tongue area, just in front of your throat, below the tongue.
And that's where it came to rest.
Yeah, it came to rest there, but it went right through her spine. It killed her immediately.
Okay.
She also has an acute injury, and I'll explain why we use the term acute. She has blunt force trauma to the back of her head, to the point it fractured her skull. So before she's shot in the back of the head, somebody hits her in the back of the head with something really hard, enough to fracture her skull.
Could anyone identify the shape of what potentially struck her in the back of the head?
It's consistent with the butt of a rifle. So potentially whoever shoots her hits her with the gun, she goes down and then shoots her, or in some order thereof. The word acute, the reason we use acute injury is it happens very close to the time of her death. And how they can tell is when those injuries happen, her heart is beating because there's actual blood flow that is impacting that injury, but there's no healing process at all. So the time of the injury and time of death are very, very close, but she's alive with the injury, and then she dies very quickly afterwards.
Do you think it's worth talking about what that actually looks like during an autopsy?